Hello and welcome to another episode of PodcastDX, the show that brings you interviews with people just like you, whose lives were forever changed by a medical diagnosis. I'm Lita.
I'm Ron.
And I'm Jean Marie.
Collectively, we're the host of PodcastDX. On today's show, we are speaking with Kristal. Kristal is suffering with fibromyalgia. Kristal is an Army veteran, and she is a fibromyalgia advocate and a patient leader. With 20 years of social services experience, Kristal's advocacy work focuses on educating the fibromyalgia community on their illness.
Well, and I think the community at large about fibromyalgia.
Yes. Welcome to our show, Kristal.
Hi, Kristal.
Hi, Kristal.
Hello. Thank you so much for having me.
Our pleasure.
And you're speaking with two military veterans as well.
Right. Jean and I are both
Yep.
military veterans.
Yep.
Oh, both you and Jean, that's awesome. I didn't know. And thank you for the hua. It's been a minute since I've heard that. So, but thank you so much for your service.
Thank you for
You as
your
well.
service.
And yours
Yes.
as well. Thank you. Kristal, can you tell us what actually is fibromyalgia?
So, what I'm going to tell you is more from a medical versus opinion, but fibromyalgia is currently classified as a central nervous system disorder, and it's characterized by symptoms of chronic widespread pain in all four quadrants of the body, chronic fatigue, insomnia, cognitive dysfunction known as brain fog, and kind of like a flu-like malaise.
Mm-hmm.
And it's a condition, though it's not fully understood. They know that it's within the root of the central nervous system, and it can also lead to internally interfering with all of our bodily systems, which can lead to developing secondary medical conditions such as IBS, migraines, just to give a few examples. And because of all those variables, fibromyalgia is deemed as a chronic, lifelong medical condition.
Sure.
Okay.
Kristal, what symptoms actually led you to first see a doctor or healthcare provider?
It's a little complicated because it wasn't an easy process for me because my symptoms actually started in the military.
Okay.
Immediately after a military vehicle accident I was in. But the biggest component of the issue I was having was pain, unexplained pain with in areas of my body that there was just no root cause, no injuries after the military vehicle accident that I was in. And it continued to occur along with I was having this fatigue and, like I said a few minutes ago, just this feeling of like having the flu without having the flu and
Right.
sleep issues. And that's how it started. And it just progressed from there over the years. So those were the main components that led me to see a doctor because it was starting to interfere with my ability to do daily tasks. And I was concerned.
Oh, sure.
So,
And then were you first diagnosed in an outside hospital, or was it a VA hospital?
Or a military hospital.
A military hospital? Right.
So my symptoms started in 2000, August of 2000, after the military vehicle accident. And from 2000 to 2006, I was having all these unexplained symptoms, being treated by for the symptoms individually. And it was a doctor through the healthcare system, private healthcare called Kaiser Permanente at the time.
Mm-hmm. California.
Yes. And the doctor there initially determined I had fibromyalgia. Back then, it wasn't as severe as it is now, but also the understanding and treatment options available and information back then was not what it is today. And so the doctor basically just handed me a pamphlet and was like, well, your act about the, fibro, back then it was called a syndrome. And the doctor's like, well, you're active and physically fit. You eat healthy. Just make sure you're getting enough sleep and take some ibuprofen and, reduce your stress and you'll be able to manage it.
Wow.
Right? Yeah. So, and then from 2006, it slowly progressed and became worse. And starting in about 2012, that led me to the path of seeing some specialists, and I ended up seeing a specialist at the Cleveland Clinic Foundation in Cleveland, Ohio, a rheumatologist, the director of the fibromyalgia clinic here up in Cleveland, Ohio, along with a neurologist at Metro Health hospital system and a pain management doctor. And they all, starting in 2012 through 2014, these three specialists reconfirmed I had fibromyalgia, but by that point it was reclassified as a disorder versus a syndrome, and I had the FMA blood test done along with what they call the WPI-SS diagnostic assessment for fibromyalgia, and those diagnostic tools confirmed my diagnosis.
Okay. And had you ever heard, I mean, obviously it's still a relatively new and evolving understanding of this disorder, but is it something you had ever even heard of before you were diagnosed?
Honestly, no. I really, and even after being diagnosed with it, I had never heard of it before.
Okay.
And back in like 2000, when I first started having symptoms while I was in the military, and even in 2006, you never heard about it anywhere.
Right.
Or it wasn't on TV. You didn't see it in medical magazines or articles. And so, no, really, it wasn't on the radar that much in, I guess, society as a whole of fibromyalgia. It was more starting around 2010 after I'd been diagnosed that I started to hear about it more. So, back then it was really hard to understand it because what information was out there was not a lot, and it was highly misunderstood because they really weren't sure if it was, is it autoimmune disorder affecting the central nervous system or a central nervous system degenerative disease or disorder affecting the nervous system. But really, information started to slowly roll out around 2010, greatly in part to entities such as Massachusetts General Hospital, who had done a lot of research studies on fibro and the nervous system and finding like fibro causes nerve damage. And the American College of Rheumatology came up with the WPI-SS diagnostic assessment, which stands for Widespread Pain Index and Symptom Severity, as the new up-to-date tool to use to diagnose and assess fibromyalgia. So around that time is when I started to see more information, hear more information, and by 2010, they had some medications which were approved by the FDA, 3 in particular, for fibromyalgia. But back in the day, there was nothing. So there was no information. And I basically had to go through this journey of, figuring out and disseminating what information was out there. And I had no one to go to. Doctors didn't really know about it, often considered or told it was more psychosomatic versus a physical issue. So
that was going to be the question I was just going to ask you, because you said you were starting to get symptoms around 2000, but it wasn't until 2010 that it's all really come together. How did the doctors respond to you with the way you were feeling? Did they believe you or think it was psychosomatic?
It sounds as though you've really had to be your own advocate here.
Oh, yes. Most certainly I was one advocate that medical professionals did not care for because I was very, forward, speaking about what my needs were. The unfortunate thing with fibromyalgia is a lot of people in society and medical professionals as a whole think it's some newly developed medical condition, when in fact it's actually been medically documented in literature dating back to 1592. It's only been it's only been within the past decade that people have kind of been sitting up paying attention, going, this is something a little bit more complex than we really thought. In 2000, it was like crickets chirping out there. No one knew anything about fibro. My symptoms started while I was still in the military. So back then it was, you suck it up and drive on, drink plenty of water, take your ibuprofen, you'll be fine.
Your Ranger pills.
So I running into lots of misinformation barriers, which led to a lot of, medical professionals, and I say professionals versus doctor because there are a lot of nurses and physicians assistants and other treatments of modality, such as chiropractic, physical therapy, that you can seek treatment for fibromyalgia. But it was often, treated like it was psychosomatic. Issues would be, they would either see it as you need more sleep, or it was being deemed by a lot of medical professionals as a mental health condition versus a physical condition. And the sad thing is despite all the headway that's been made on fibromyalgia in medical research, within the past 6 months, I've had a medical provider basically tell me that it's all in my head, and a diagnosis that is given when doctors don't know what's really wrong with you.
Wow.
And it's a female disease.
Wow.
Yeah. And the doctor said, and it's a female disease. And I just kind of looked at the doctor and said, well, it's actually a disorder of the central nervous system that affects both genders. So there's a lot, and that's, a huge problem is getting all medical providers on the same page with this condition, but really all conditions, because there's so many medical conditions in the world. It's not feasible for doctors to become experts on every single medical condition.
Right.
But a huge barrier that people with fibromyalgia have is finding a receptive medical provider, doctor, or medical team to be open to receiving information and having a constructive, respectful conversation about fibromyalgia and the patient's perspective, or the patient providing like tangible medical evidence of what fibromyalgia is when they give it to the doctor. So that's a huge problem. It's okay that doctors don't understand it or know it, but another barrier is we come across a lot of medical providers who are not open to receiving information about fibromyalgia from the patients. And I always say we are our own experts because we live with the condition.
Right.
So
Right.
That's a really big barrier right now for everyone in the fibromyalgia community.
Well, and I do think there is a gap between the research and getting that information and the resources out to the providers, and keeping up with everything can be a challenge for them.
Yeah, I always wonder, is it better to see a physician that's newly minted out of the medical school, where they've gotten all of the latest research, as far as education, or is it
they do take continuing education classes,
but still
where they can learn. But
yeah.
There is a gap there. But I'm glad that you did finally get that, that 3-member team. Well, I don't know if they were working as a team, but those 3 individuals to help you get through some of this.
Yeah, but there's a big difference between not knowing and also dissing somebody.
Right.
Oh, right. Absolutely.
Yeah.
I'm very sorry that you went through all of that. And we are going to be speaking with another individual who happens to be male, who also has fibromyalgia.
And also a veteran.
And also is a veteran, because, like you said, this is something that can affect anyone with the central nervous system.
Right. We're going to have his episode, that's going to be posting right after yours, so that we give everyone, all of our listeners, a complete look at this disorder.
Also, don't we have an upcoming episode about how to fire your doctor and get a new one?
How to find the right doctor for you.
Yes.
Absolutely.
So, Kristal, obviously you don't have anybody in your family that has this disorder, because otherwise you would have heard about it before.
Actually, that's not true. It's just nobody talks about it.
Oh.
Yeah, and I didn't know. And it would have been great if I did know, because it could have saved me a lot of time of spinning my wheels in which direction to go to what medical doctor. But what happened was I was diagnosed, when my diagnosis of fibromyalgia was reconfirmed in later years, it was at that point that I had learned on my mother's side of the family that I had a cousin, one who's a male, and another cousin who's a female, and an aunt, my mom's sister, diagnosed with fibromyalgia. And then about 2 years ago, I connected with some family members on my biological father's side of the family to find out that I had a cousin and an aunt, my biological father's sister, and her daughter were diagnosed with fibromyalgia. So I had it on both sides of the family, and it was like a double whammy.
Yeah.
And the interesting thing is, I didn't know this, and I've been diagnosed with severe treatment-resistant fibromyalgia. And when I brought this point up to my pain management specialist, I said, I let them know when I found out it was on my mother's side of the family. When I found out it ran on my father's side of the family, I said, do you think this is the reason my fibro is severe and treatment resistant? And he looked at me and said, absolutely. There's a lot of research out there and indication that fibromyalgia runs in families, which is not necessarily meaning it's a risk you will get it, but it's a strong, predisposition that you might develop it if the circumstances are right. If that makes sense.
Right.
Kristal, you mentioned a pain management team. Is that how you treat the fibromyalgia, or what else do you do to treat it?
Well, because of the complexity of fibromyalgia and it affecting so many areas within the body, you can use a variety of treatment modalities, both medical and non-medical, to cope with it, manage it. And for myself, I use both, non-medical, such as I will do meditation. I've been trained, for lack of a better term, in biofeedback. And I do check in with a pain psychologist just to make sure that, I'm staying, forward thinking and a good mental attitude on coping with the pain. And then I follow a really strict diet because eating poorly is just not good for your health in general. You can develop a lot of health problems. And when you have a serious medical condition like fibromyalgia, the last thing you want to do is eat bad and develop other problems. But the other thing with fibro is, in my instance, I find like if I'm eating processed foods, junk food, too much sugar, that it can exacerbate my symptoms at times. And IBS, irritable bowel syndrome, is a very common secondary medical issue with fibro. So, diet and nutrition is, for me, a strong treatment approach to manage that. Because if my IBS goes out of whack, it affects the fibro, and it's just a whole downward spiral. And then I do utilize medical treatment, but I'm very limited on what I can access because, unfortunately, the three types of meds, Lyrica, which is the anticonvulsant, Cymbalta, antidepressant, and Savella, which is the antidepressant, which anticonvulsants, antidepressants are the most common medications used to manage fibromyalgia. I'm allergic to them.
Oh, no.
So that treatment option is out for me. So I am prescribed muscle relaxers because we get what they call like muscular rheumatism, which is we get knots, twitches, spasms, and muscle weaknesses. So I am prescribed muscle relaxers to help with that because that can exacerbate pain. Nausea is common with people with fibromyalgia, and I am prescribed an anti-nausea medication, and I am prescribed pain medication to manage the pain. And then I also receive what they call intravenous ketamine, lidocaine, infusion therapy treatment to maintain and manage my symptoms and keep them on a lower level on a scale of 1 to 10 in the middle of the road there, so that they don't get so bad that I'm going to the ER or hospital all the time.
Sure.
So between that, physical exercise, and being really guarding my sleep hygiene and good nutrition and having really good coping skills for the pain, and then pharmaceutical and medical support, that's pretty much how I support managing my fibromyalgia to get through each day.
Okay. And I think you said that you saw a rheumatologist already for care?
Yes, a rheumatologist at Cleveland Clinic Foundation. I have been seen by a neurologist as well. People with fibromyalgia could go to either one. And a pain management doctor. I've received treatment off and on from a chiropractor and physical therapy, so I can access full therapy. And I did, about a decade ago, I did see a nutritionist to help kind of figure out what foods kind of exacerbated my symptoms and which ones to stay away from, and then to incorporate good, healthy foods to make sure I was getting all the vitamins and minerals I needed to support my immune system.
Oh, sure.
You know what? I kind of just got a mental image here as you were talking, that a typical person is going about their day and they have things that are distracting them, just general life activities that they're thinking about and doing. and they don't think about, what am I going to eat? How am I going to eat? What am I going to do about this? It seems like your entire life seems to be balanced about keeping your symptoms in check.
And you hit the nail on the head. My job now is my health. Unfortunately, yes, I did work 20 years in social services. My symptoms over almost decades had worsened to the point of where I could no longer work. And, there's a lot of reasons: that chronic fatigue, that chronic pain, that brain fog. You drop details, or I'll forget names of things and I'll replace it. I'm pretty good and quick-witted as far as compensating for the brain fog, but when you are working, you can't work if you're dropping details, especially working in the field that I worked in, because you're working with individuals and you're impacting their life. And if you're forgetting things, or if you're having a hard time comprehending stuff, it's hard to work. And then that fatigue, it's like I can vacuum and then I have to lay down for 2 hours afterwards to kind of recuperate. It is a daily, my job is my health, and it is a job that is 24/7. There's no vacation. There's no 401k. I don't get benefits. I don't get employee of the year. But I do get is at least a sense of balancing my symptoms so that I can, function to the best of my ability within my physical limitations. So it's a job.
That's amazing.
Chris, so you just used the word balance. There's a lot there to balance. Do you have family or anybody that helps you on a day-to-day basis if you need it?
I do, and I'm very, very fortunate that I have the support systems I have in place. The sad thing is, you find a lot of people with fibromyalgia, because it's such a misunderstood medical condition and it's invisible. For some of the time it's invisible because you can't always see it. People around you might not believe the severity of it or if it's real. So it's hard to have really non-biased support systems in place. I'm very fortunate. I have a great family. Not only will they help me out if I need it, they are very, very, very supportive of my advocacy efforts and everything I'm doing for the fibromyalgia community and myself. My friends I couldn't ask for a better set of friends. I'm fortunate, and unfortunately, my situation is not what the norm is. But yes, I do have people who help me, and I've even had friends come over when I've been in really bad flare-ups. They'll come over, visit, they'll clean up a little bit for me, or take care of some things, to bring me some food. And my mom is, both my parents are very supportive. They've never once questioned it. They, in their own right, are advocates on my behalf, because they tell what it's like to watch me go through this invisible illness that's not really invisible, that they can see. Like, she can't, I used to kickbox. I worked out all the time. I used to hike 5 miles, 10 miles like it was nothing. And I was in the Army. So obviously there's a component of my life where the majority of the time I was pretty physically active, and they've been witnesses to the process of me moving from that to where I am now. And they've seen like the whole picture, and they're not silent about it. I'll say my daughter has fibromyalgia. We've noticed these things since the onset of her symptoms.
Right.
And so I'm fortunate. I have a good support system in place, which I said it's not what everybody in my situation has, which makes fibromyalgia even that much more difficult to cope with or manage.
Kristal, in addition to your family and friends, do you use any other support systems or whatever online or anything like that?
That's a great question. Thank you for asking. As I explained earlier, my journey was, I didn't know originally I had family with fibro, and it just was something that was so hush-hush or so misunderstood. I did not know people in daily life that had fibromyalgia. The internet is definitely not where it was back in 2000, especially social media sites, where they were just a possible idea back in 2000. Through my journey as social media became more pronounced and defined, and social media pages such as Facebook and Instagram and patient leaders that had blogs would create websites. And what I was finding is there wasn't really a community online tailored to, putting together the information as far as what fibro is, the medical facts, research, and had that component of support. So I tried some online groups, communities, which were good, but it wasn't really fitting what I needed. And so I ended up developing a community online that provides the medical information, research information, talking to people and educating them with fibromyalgia and other chronic illnesses, how to best advocate for themselves through the healthcare system and their needs, along with cultivate and develop online support systems and friendships with people who know that you're, what you're going through. And so I actually ended up creating that because I realized, I'm a strong advocate for myself, and I had so many problems and so many bumps in the road, so many barriers, and I have no problem speaking up on my own behalf. And if I was having these problems, how is someone who might be shy or might be fearful of, speaking up for themselves, how is it for them if I had so many difficulties? And so that's when I developed this online support system, because I'd been through it and I knew other people were going through it. And we needed, as a community, a piece that had that medical information, that education on your patient rights and how to advocate for your healthcare needs or disability benefits, along with that supportive, collective, feeling of friendship and unity online. And
what is that? What is that website?
Journey. So I'm the founder and creator of the Fibromyalgia Pain Chronicles, and I am also the co-founder for Veteran Voices for Fibromyalgia. And the main hub for both of those happens to be Facebook, since that's such a great social media platform to bring people together from all over the world. And I'm on Instagram, the Fibromyalgia Pain Chronicles. And I had a website before, it even had a blog, but it wasn't resonating with the community as far as they preferred that they had that, not just the information that they could get to easily, but having that social connection online. So those are the main hubs. And then I network and collaborate with other fibromyalgia advocates and organizations to bring more cohesiveness amongst the fibromyalgia community.
That's great.
Because it doesn't, it's like it was pointed out earlier, it can affect anybody at any age, gender, race, religion. The other thing about fibromyalgia is research has shown that fibromyalgia occurs in the world's population. Between 2 to 4% of the world's population has fibromyalgia, which is at the same occurrence rate as diabetes. So there's a lot of us out there, and we're not, able to always find each other. So working and bringing everyone together online, and then working with other fibromyalgia advocates and organizations, and even other chronic illness advocates and patient leaders with other illnesses, really helps to bring this community together so that we have these support systems in place online, or individual support groups in the vicinity of where people live. And we encourage people to create their own groups where they live so they can also interface with people.
Right, and form that support group, right, and that support system, rather, that they need. Do you have any additional tips for someone who's been newly diagnosed with fibromyalgia?
Oh, yes. You know what? The biggest tip is do your research, but don't just stop at an article that's published on BuzzFeed. Do your research from credible resources. Research those people with fibromyalgia online, on the internet, or on social media platforms who really, resonate with you. And it doesn't matter if that advocate is more of a support or a positive group of humor and fun, or an advocate that is trying to help people better understand their illness. Whatever resonates with you and works for you, seek that out. But definitely educate yourself. Don't just stop at 1 or 2 articles. Read information that's published in medical journals. not just articles that are published on web magazines or printed articles. Because the unfortunate thing is a lot of medical entities, including medical health related, like journalism for lack of a better term, they're also behind too. So like, for example, if you look up on some websites like WebMD or the Mayo Clinic, there's places in there on the website about fibromyalgia. They talk about it and they'll say there's no blood test for it, which in fact there's 2 now, and a third one is being developed by a doctor at Ohio State University, a medical research team there, or they'll still call it a syndrome. And that's what I tell people. I'm like, don't just look at the first layer. Approach fibromyalgia kind of like an onion, because, onions aren't always pleasant like fibromyalgia, but do that research, peel back that layer after layer after layer to get the information that you need and make sure it's current, and seek out your tribe that you feel connects with you the most, that resonates with you the most, and that is a trusted resource so that you have support systems and access to information that is current and up to date.
That's wonderful advice. Thank you for that.
Mm-hmm.
And Kristal, thank you ever so much for joining us today. We'll make sure that we have links to the Veterans Voices for Fibromyalgia and your chronicles on our website as well, so that that's another way for them to reach you.
Right. Absolutely. Yes, thank you, Kristal.
Yes, thank you for your time and also again for your service.
Yeah.
Oh, thank you so much. And no, thank you for giving me your time to speak about fibromyalgia, because every opportunity to talk about it really helps the community tenfold. So I'm truly appreciative of being able to have this opportunity. And I thank all of you so much for helping me promote awareness on your episode here.
And did I also see online that you have every 4th Friday as a Fibromyalgia Awareness Day?
I do. I have I use social media as a forum to bring people together so that they can promote awareness. So the one is 4th Friday Fibro Day, where the 4th Friday of every month we put on the color of purple, which is the designated awareness color for fibromyalgia. And we take a photo, we post our selfie on our social media sites with the hashtag 4th Friday Fibro Day, Cure for Fibro and Fibromyalgia Awareness. And that's just to promote solidarity, support, and awareness for fibromyalgia on social media, to spread information to those who don't have fibromyalgia, but also show people with fibromyalgia that there's all of us out here that we can connect with. And then I have an annual social media campaign. I'm going into the 7th year, and the last 3 years, it actually trended on Facebook in 5 different countries, which is really astonishing to me. It's like mind-boggling. I'm like, wow. And it's called POP, Put on Purple, for Fibromyalgia Awareness Day. And the concept is similar to the 4th Friday Fibro Day, where you put on purple and you post a selfie with hashtag Fibromyalgia Awareness Day, Cure for Fibro. But in that campaign, I like the word layers. That's like my word of the month right now. I have layers where I roll out fibromyalgia fact sheets that I've created so that people can share them with their friends, family, and on their social media sites, and research. And I do videos talking about fibromyalgia, or videos on how to advocate for your health care. And that's been like my staple awareness campaign on social media, and it's going in its 7th year. And then I have a Faces of Pain awareness campaign that I do in the month of September, because September is Chronic Pain Awareness Month. The Pop and Put on Purple for Fibromyalgia Awareness is done in May, because the month of May is designated as Fibromyalgia Awareness Month, and May 12th is Fibromyalgia Awareness Day. And so that's when I do that Pop and Put on Purple campaign. And then the 4th Friday of every month, I do the 4th Friday Fibro Day. And I do little funny videos to kind of get people's attention. I don't have any problem embarrassing myself on social media if it helps the cause, right?
Neither do we.
If it helps the cause, I don't care.
All right.
That's wonderful.
Well, thank you again, Kristal.
Yeah, thank you, Kristal.
If our listeners have any questions or comments related to today's show, they can contact us at PodcastDX@yahoo.com, through our website, PodcastDX.com, on Facebook, Twitter, Pinterest, or Instagram.
And if you have a moment to spare, please give us a 5-star review wherever you get your podcast. As always, please keep in mind that this podcast is not intended to be a substitute for professional medical advice, diagnosis, or treatment. Always seek the advice of your physician or other qualified healthcare provider with any questions you may have regarding a medical condition or treatment and before undertaking a new healthcare regime. And never disregard professional medical advice or delay in seeking it because of something you've heard on this podcast.
Till next week.